I joined the military basically because of September 11th. I had a good job and family and everything when September 11th happened, and I personally felt that I could no longer enjoy the freedoms that I was living. You know, these people attacked us. It was unwarranted, and I had to do something about it. So my entire thought process of joining the military was based off to September 11th, and I ran out and joined the military. No, they shook my hand, patted me on the back, and said I'm doing great things for my country, and I'm a brave person for doing this. And but I didn't need anybody to explain it to me. I didn't need the pats on the back. I was doing this because I felt I needed to be the hand of vengeance for all those killed on September 11th. Actually, I joined the Navy, and when I was in the Navy, my deployment was to Bahrain, and which was just an island outside of Saudi Arabia, and it was more of a vacation spot than anything else. Then I came and was actually in Wichita, Kansas, and here in Wichita is where I trained reservists, and I then felt that I needed to do more for my country, that I wasn't doing enough. I needed to be that guy kicking in doors, and so I did what's called a lateral transfer, which was I got a conditional release from the Navy that depended on that I was joining the Army infantry, and so within 4 days of getting that conditional release from the Navy, I was in basic training for the Army down in Georgia. Well, I went to Iraq, and I had it in my mind in 2007. We went as part of George Bush's surge. We were like, I believe, the second battalion sent for the surge, and you know, the entire time, our battalion leaders and division leaders are like, "Oh, you got to get out there and get some and shoot these people in the face." And there was a saying at the time of to win the hearts and minds of the people of Iraq. Well, our battalion had a saying: two in the heart, one in the mind, which was, you're going to go over there, you're going to shoot them twice in the heart and once in the head, make sure they're dead, double tap. And I also had it in my head that there's some innocent people in Iraq who are being oppressed by these militia members, and in 2007 Saddam Hussein was already gone, and so I went over there with the idea that I'm going to liberate these Iraqis, and people are going to throw flowers at us, and I got over to Iraq in 2007, and I was getting rocks thrown at me instead of flowers, and I couldn't for the life of me think, why do these people hate us so bad? We're here to help them, and that was when I first got there. Within like the first week, the second week I was there, I was hit with my first IED and blown up, and I was angry. I was like, wow, I can't believe I just got blown up. Who's doing this to me? Well, our standard operating procedure from our battalion commander was 360-degree rotational fire whenever we were hit by an IED. So we were told to kill every person in the street when an IED went off, and my unit did. And so we were killing men, women, and children on the street because we were told that the only way for us to maintain control of our area of operations was to strike more fear into the people who lived in that area than the terrorists did. So essentially to out-terrorize the terrorist. And which, much like communism, looks great on paper, but doesn't work in the real life. Because once you start killing people's children, those people are in turn going to pick up a weapon and start fighting you back. If I kicked in, your door and went inside your house and shot your child, are you going to thank me and say, oh, you did it for my freedom, thank you very much? Or are you going to pick up a weapon and try to kill me or anyone who looks like me? I would do the same thing. So I couldn't be angry with them. And I started to realize very quickly that I personally had more in common with a common person in Iraq than I did with the people who sent me to war. July 12th, 2007, we left the fob about 4:30 in the morning to go out and do a Rage or Dominance, which was basically a show of force. We go out, the entire battalion, which consisted of Alpha through Delta companies, and we would go and do knock-on searches and look for militia-related materials in homes. The majority of the morning, nothing was going on. We were out there playing with animals and joking around. It was hot. We were bored and tired, and we were getting ready to load up and leave when a couple of guys from rooftops fired a couple of shots at us. We then returned fire, and the guys on the rooftop, they disappeared. They were gone. And this would happen frequently, that a couple of guys would take pop shots at us and then run off. And that's when we heard the Apaches open fire from roughly 5 blocks away. Apache fire, you could tell it's Apache fire. The rounds, they cut open the sky. It's very loud. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't get any of the radio chatter. The person giving authorization to fire was, in fact, my platoon sergeant. And my platoon sergeant was going based off of what the Apache pilots were telling him. We were told to move to that location. I went running down there, and when I first got up on the scene, what I saw was what appeared to be 4 men on a corner. And I say appeared because they were just completely destroyed. It was pretty much just chunks of meat, guys with their heads blown open, brains and guts all over the place. Like a 30 millimeter round is not supposed to be used for people, so the smell was horrible when I got up on the scene, because you could smell the feces inside the people, the urine, their insides, smoke, and then just a smell that you can't even describe. And so I did see an RPG up against the wall. It did not have an RPG round in it. I also saw an AK-47, and I saw a camera. When I got on the scene, one of the things that first struck me is I could hear a child crying. And having children of my own, I knew that it wasn't a cry of like pain, but it was more along the cry of like when your kid wakes up from a nightmare. And so I could tell that it was coming from this van that had been completely shot up. So I went over to the van, and one of the soldiers that I was with, looked inside and turned around and started to throw up. And you can actually see it in the video where he's like that as he's running away. And he was only 18 years old, the private I was with. So I looked inside, and when I looked inside, what I saw was a little girl about 4 years old. She had blood all over her. You could tell that she had shrapnel wounds to the stomach. She had glass in her eyes to where she couldn't blink her eyes. And one of the things that struck me is her eyes were so white, and they still stick with me to this day. But she couldn't blink, and she just had them open, and she was crying. There was glass in her hair. Next to her, he was sitting on the floorboard, in the middle, with his head resting on the bench seat, was a boy about 7 years old, and I immediately thought he was dead. He had a severe wound to the right side of his head, and he wasn't moving or breathing, it didn't seem. And in the driver's seat was who I concluded was the father, because of the way he was kind of hunched over towards the kids in a protective manner. He took some of those 30 millimeter rounds to him, so there was no way that he had survived. I picked up the little girl and screamed out for a medic, who followed me into the house behind the van. And me and the medic were in there cleaning her up and checking for exit wounds to see if she'd been shot or, the extent of her injuries. I took off my gloves and was picking as much glass out of her eyes as I possibly could so that she could blink. And I was rubbing her hair and getting the glass out and running water through her hair. That's when you can hear that the medic says that there's nothing else you can do here. So he ran the girl to the Bradley, and I went back outside. And for some reason, I went back to the van. I'm not sure, why I went back to the van. I think I was upset, and I wanted to take pictures so I could show people that this is the reason why we don't do this. And I was, inside I'm screaming, I'm just like, what the fuck are we doing? These are babies. And that's when the boy inside the van took a labored breath. He just moved. And I started screaming that the boy's alive, and I grabbed him and I held him up against my chest, and I was telling him, everything's gonna be okay, I have you, don't die. And you could see me running towards the van, or towards the Bradley, with him in my arms, and there's a point where I stopped running, and that's because the boy looked up at me, and then his eyes rolled back into his head and he went limp, and I thought that he had died at that point. And so I stopped running and I placed him inside the Bradley. And my platoon leader, who's a lieutenant, was there, and he said, McCord, what the F are you doing? Stop worrying about these MFing kids and go pull security. At that point, I had already gotten the kids out, so roger that, sir. And I went up to a rooftop and pulled security, and on the rooftop is where one of the soldiers took a picture of me with the children's blood all over the front. And, that's when Hellfire missiles were being fired into a building that was a block away, and you could hear them. A lot of people don't know that it was just family inside that building that got Hellfired, and the family was killed in there, too. Were there bad guys in the area? Sure. There were people who were shooting at other people. A couple of other platoons were taking fire. But these guys were not part of it. I've since spoken with a lot of people in a lot of the families of the individuals in Iraq. And to my understanding, those guys, the one with the AK-47 and the RPG, they were actually Moss guards from down the road. So, everything's not black and white. There's a whole gray area. And just in the same sense that you have to understand that as a soldier, if you see a man with an RPG, you have to fire on that man. But the Apache crew members embellished all of the information that they were giving. They said 6 to 7 individuals with RPGs and AK-47s. They said that the man, that the journalist had an RPG, which you can clearly see that it's not an RPG. Was there an RPG there? Yes. Were they firing at us? No. So yeah, that was the turning point for me. I could no longer self-justify what I was doing personally in Iraq. And the emotions got to me. I became extremely angry. And I had to do what I had to do. I did what I would hope that any father in the same situation would do if the roles were reversed and it was my children in the van. I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. I'm going to continue speaking to high schools about the realities of joining the military and of war. And I'm going to continue to support whistleblowers. I'm going to continue to support Bradley Manning. Um, Bradley Manning, if he is guilty of doing what they're accusing him of, I feel has more patriotism in his little finger than all of Capitol Hill. And for that, I will stand behind him 100%. And I think every American should as well. And what they're doing to him is sickening. It doesn't take 2 years to start a trial for somebody. And I think that they're railroading him 100%. So I will continue to stand behind him. I will continue to try to bring light to people, to civilians, to understand what's going on. Regret, to say you regret something is very difficult. I, I, I have regrets. Maybe that I didn't open my eyes sooner. I have regrets for some of the things I did in Iraq. Some things I'm ashamed of. You know, my daughter. When someone asks her, my 9-year-old daughter, what her dad did in Iraq, she always says, "Oh, he was over there fighting the bad guys." But I haven't yet been able to tell my daughter that I, in fact, was the bad guy in Iraq. How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you say that to your daughter?